Welcome. My name is José Rafael, and I'm a researcher from MED, University of Évora. And I have to say that EURAGRI is pleased to announce its second webinar series on climate change adaptation for agriculture and food systems in the Mediterranean region. 3 EURAGRI members are hosting the second webinar series. MED, Mediterranean Institute for Agriculture, Environment and Development in Portugal, INEA CSIC, the National Institute of Agriculture and Food Research and Technology from Spain, and HACTA, representing the French Agriculture Technical Institutes and Applied Research Organizations for Animal and Plant Production. I have to say that climate change is an issue, and an issue with impact on natural resources, those natural resources that agricultural activity depends on. 2 main ideas occur to me to introduce this event, and they are rooted in 2 words: efficiency and resilience. All the systems in agriculture tend to be efficient because normally, unless until now, they stimulate speed, economy of scale, a linear perspective, risk management, no regulations, and intensive capital or short capital term. But with climate change, I think resilience is the new transition that we have to make. We have to understand complexity, network and agglomeration of economies, systemic perspective, risk mutualization, regulation, patient capital, not having a short-term capital, but a long-term capital. So I wish you all a fruitful event, and I pass the floor to Professor Fátima Batista, Director of MED, and the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Rafael, for your words, and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for coming. I will be the moderator of this session. Professor Rafael already presented me. I am Fátima Batista, the Director of MED, and I will be sharing this session today. We will have, I guess you already know, the program. We will have 3 speakers, and let me first, before presenting you the first one, let me just remember, please, to use the questions and answers for putting your questions. Do not use the chat because we will not be able to have control on that. So please use the questions and answers. Now going to the first speaker, it's Professor Gottlieb Barsch, that we will talk about the challenge for climate change adaptation in Mediterranean crop production systems. And let me give you some words of our first speaker. Professor Gottlieb Barsch has a doctorate degree in agricultural sciences from Georg August University, Göttingen, Germany. And since 1991, he is professor at the University of Évora in Portugal and member of the former Institute of Mediterranean Agriculture and Environmental Sciences, now the MED, located, of course, in this university. He has been working on soil and water conservation and soil carbon dynamics. His main interests are focused on sustainable land use and implementation of conservation agriculture systems. Besides his involvement in H2020 projects, he has been also involved in 3 EIP focus groups, one of it on water and agriculture adaptive strategies at farm level. Gottlieb Barsch has been president of the European Conservation Agriculture Federation between 2002 and 2008, and now again since 2011. At present, he is a member of the DG Climate Expert Group on Carbon Removals. So thank you, Gottlieb, for your availability to participate in this webinar. We will have a presentation of around 15 minutes and then between 5 and 10 minutes for questions and answers. Thank you, Gottlieb, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Fatima, for this introduction, and I would like to welcome all attendees to this webinar, which is actually one of 3 webinars on climate change adaptation in the Mediterranean. This very first one is on crop production systems, more or less broad-acre crop production systems. A second one is on horticultural production systems, and the third one is on livestock systems and their adaptation to climate change. Now I will go to share my screen. I hope it's working well, and you have now my screen. Can see my screen in presentation mode. So this first one is on well, sorry. Okay, here we go. Yeah, well, I called my presentation Challenges for Climate Change Adaptation in Mediterranean Crop Production Systems. Well, a brief outline of my presentation. First, I would like to well, bring you all on the same page on what we actually can expect in the future with regard to climate change. We then will go into climate change adaptation, which I consider really the immediate priority when it comes to climate change action. I would also shortly mention the Mediterranean context, because it's different from other regions. And then I go into some of the adaptation strategies and provide a few examples and conclude afterwards. Okay, climate change, what can we expect actually? You see here, these are the projected temperatures in the near future. Well, not in the near future. This was already happening until now, until 2020. And you can see that the Mediterranean temperatures are well above the global warming temperatures. You see the green line is what is happening to the global temperature, and the blue one is the Mediterranean situation. So the Mediterranean will be much more heating up. The same you can see here on the left-hand side, and here are different scenarios. These are the representative concentration pathways, so scenarios that consider different scenarios in terms of radiative forcing. You see, the lowest one will still go up to more than 2 degrees centigrades until 2100. And the same happens with the precipitation. And here, on the contrary, it's going down. And you see here the percentage of decline, also with regard to different scenarios. You see here in the Mediterranean region, regions are affected differently. Some are going to receive less rain in the near future. Others are going to receive even more. But those that will receive less are the majority of regions. And only looking at the situation here in Évora, where we are located in Portugal, you see here the average annual rainfall between 71 and 2000 was 609 millimeters, whereas 30 years later, well, 10 years actually later, but the period of 30 years, it already went down to 587. So a clear evidence of what we are going to face. And this is now the availability for irrigation. And of course, the less water we will receive through rainfall, the less we will have available for irrigation. And these are the predicted changes in water availability for irrigation. You see here the Iberian Peninsula, also the south of Italy will be very, very much affected. What about future trends? What can we expect? No doubt that we will have more extreme events, heat waves, droughts, floods and storms. And especially with regard to floods and storms, you may probably remember very well what happened last autumn in Greece, where we had these tremendous rainfalls, which were around 600 millimeters, which is the average rainfall here of Evora, annual rainfall. They had in one day, and this is due actually to the heating up of the Mediterranean, especially in different regions. Here you see here the east of the Mediterranean is heating up quite a lot, and this is the cause actually for extreme rainfalls and floods. We also will have changes in rainfall distribution, not only overall reduction of annual rainfall, but also its distribution will change. And this results in changes in growing seasons. Just to recall here something that happened for the first time over the last, I never remember such an event. We had high rainfall here in last September and very warm temperatures end of September, beginning of October. And this caused the citrus trees to flower. And now I can see fruit that are normally should not exist. And we will still face certainly other events that we are not facing at the moment. What are the responses to climate change? Of course, we have to mitigate. Mitigate means to emit less greenhouse gases, and we have to increase the removals of the atmosphere. This we all agree all on this, but this is something that will make effect only in the medium long term. So we do need, and this is now adaptation of our agriculture, of our cropping systems. Looking at how to adapt, we have to bear in mind the Mediterranean context with regard to our climate, because Mediterranean climate is actually unique, because it's the only climate where we have a mismatch between temperature and precipitation. All others do not have this mismatch. Either you have precipitation all year round, or you have it in the season when it's warm, but not so in the Mediterranean. In Mediterranean, it's just 1.7% of the global surface has Mediterranean climate. And here we can find only two favorable periods for plant growth. One is actually in the autumn, when we, after the rain starts and we still have warm temperatures. The other one is in spring, where either through soil moisture and still some rainfall and temperature growing up, we also have this spring favorable period for crop production. The rest, both in winter, we do have the plant growth is limited to by temperature, lower temperature, and in summer, of course, it's due to the water stress, no rainfall. Another characteristic of the Mediterranean climate is this extreme interannual variability. You see here the situation of Evora. We can have variation between 300 and 1100 millimeters. And after these records, we even had a year with less than 300 millimeters. And it's also another problem. It's the beginning of the rainy season. It can happen very early. You see here in 86, 87 at the very beginning of September, but it also can happen only in November. And if it starts very late, then you already lost one of the favorable growing periods for crop production. And I remember this year, 85, 86 very well. This was the second year of my field trials for my thesis. and I was desperate to receive rain to start the trials. But well, you can this of course under rain-fed conditions. And but even if we had irrigation in such circumstances, we could, with a little amount of rain, of irrigation water, we could anticipate actually the growing season and still take advantage of the warmer temperatures. And also spring precipitation can extremely vary. You see here 2 years, one with 40 millimeters of rainfall in the month March, April, and May, which are actually the best month for growing plants. You can have only a little bit, and you can have quite a lot, which is quite favorable. But you never know. So here also, again, low amounts of irrigation could smoothen this variability. Now, coming to the adaptation strategies. What are the main categories of adaptation strategies we have? One is, for sure, water management related. The other strategies are soil management related. And finally, we do have crop selection related strategies. Now, one by one. Regarding the water-related adaptation strategies, we definitely will have to go for more efficient irrigation systems, including deficit irrigation and precision irrigation. We need, or we could go for rainwater harvesting, but this is actually only possible either through huge, dams or in the soil. It's very difficult on the very shallow soils frequent in the Mediterranean region that you can store and harvest water, rainwater in the soil for the next season. So this is a limited strategy. And finally, we could shift from pure summer crops irrigation to supplementary irrigation of autumn sown crops. You see, because summer crops, you need to irrigate right from the planting until almost the harvest. Whereas autumn sown crops, you only would need to irrigate either something in the very beginning after planting or at the very end. So the use of water could be much better if you use the irrigation water for autumn sown crops instead of pure summer crops. Regarding the soil management related strategies, and here we are talking both about the green and blue water. I hope you all are familiar with these two terms. Green is just provided by rainfall and precipitation, and the blue water would be by irrigation. And you see here what happens when we have the rain pouring down onto the soil. You have all these processes that govern actually the use of the water through the soils. And if we look more closely, then we have to look at the soil and where we can actually intervene to improve the efficiency and the use efficiency of both green and blue water. We have to manage infiltration, we have to manage retention, and we have to manage evaporation. And in the next slide, you see here the processes and parameters that affect soil water. And you see here infiltration. Of course, we have to avoid runoff. We should guarantee that most of the water arriving at the soil infiltrates, avoiding runoff. We have to reduce evaporation as much as possible, because evaporation is a pure loss of water because it's not productive. Only transpiration is a productive use of water, of course, if it's used by crops, not by weeds. And finally, we should try to improve soil retention in the soil. through the increase of the mesopores that retain water and provide water to the plants, to the crops. And the best way how to intervene in these processes and parameters is through these soil management related strategies, which is minimum soil disturbance, which improves infiltration and over time improves also retention, because it creates a higher percentage of the mesopores that retain water and deliver it to the crop. We have to go for permanent soil cover through residues, which both help water to infiltrate, reduce tremendously evaporation, and also contribute to keep the temperature of the soil at acceptable levels, especially here in spring. And finally, it also means that we have to promote organic matter buildup, because the more organic matter we have in the soil, the higher is the water retention. Crop selection related adaptation strategies go either through the use of drought resistant or tolerant species and varieties. We all know that they are. It sometimes is at the expense of productivity, but well, a total failure of a crop because it's not at all drought resistant or tolerant is much worse than production reduction. It may mean that we have to adopt cropping and crop cycles to plant earlier or later, to use shorter cycles of crops to adapt better to a shorter rainfall period and so on. And we also should go for the diversification of crops that might reduce the risk of failure. I'm very concerned actually about the spread, tremendous spread of permanent crops that are all irrigated now here in the Alentejo in the south of Portugal. I'm really concerned about this, because this is not at all in this sense to reduce the risk of eventual failures. Now, two short examples of how to manage crops to improve water use efficiency. And this is one we had once in a corn crop sown into a thick layer of mulch. And on the other hand, we had conventional tillage. And you see here the evolution of soil water over time in the no-till with a high residue plot and the conventional tilled plot. The amount of irrigation water was actually the same, but the losses through evaporation are justifying this huge difference. And at the end of the season, you see here next to next the soil profile under the thick mulch layer, and here under the conventional tilled layer. And we also had once a project in which we participated in, which we looked into different soil management practices, into different crop varieties. In this case, it was wheat varieties, shorter cycled, longer cycled, and we could find some responses of the wheat crop to different levels of water availability as we used rain-fed and irrigated. I don't want to go into details with these figures, productivity figures. And I will conclude. And I think we can say that more than other regions, the Mediterranean will be impacted by climate change. This means that we need effective mitigation strategies on the one hand, but especially adaptation must start right away. We will have problems, and we see that water scarcity can be better dealt with than temperature extremes, no doubt about that. We also need to apply a mix of adaptation strategies that can make crop production more resilient to climate change. And finally, appropriate soil management is certainly a key to adapt to climate change. So we, as already Darwin said, well, we only will survive if we adapt, and this needs to be fast. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gottlieb, for your very interesting presentation. We have a few minutes, 5 minutes for questions and answers. Please, all the participants, just remember to insert your questions in the questions and answers, and not in the chat, as I mentioned before. For now, we don't have any question from the assistants. So, Gottlieb, I have one question for you just to start. Meanwhile, I hope that the participants will participate. Your presentation shows a very broad approach and view of this huge problem that we have with the climate changes, and I fully agree with you. It's adaptation. I don't think for now it's not mitigation that's already gone. We have to adapt for sure. And what is the potential that you think does adequate soil management have to adapt to the consequences of the climate change?
Well, I would actually consider soil management and sustainable soil management extremely crucial to adapt to climate change, because well, as I mentioned in my presentation, and well, I couldn't go into much more detail, but we have to fine-tune our system in terms of guaranteeing better infiltration of the rainwater we receive. We have to retain as much as possible in the soil, and finally, we have to decrease unproductive losses, mainly through evaporation. And for this, the soil management based on the principles of conservation agriculture, and I'm happy that we have today a third presentation about soil conservation through conservation agricultural principles in the KAMA project, which I also followed in the past. And it's, well, just to mention, and well, I did not say much more about this trial this project where we try to quantify the amount of evaporation losses that we could avoid through the thick mulch layer in the maize crop. But we estimate that out of 8,000 cubic meters that are normally needed to irrigate a maize crop during the whole vegetation period, we could save 25% of this water, so reduce the amount of irrigation water from 8,000 to 6,000 cubic meters just by having the soil covered the way I showed.
Yes, thank you for your answer. And we have now a question from the assistants. It's an anonymous participant that is thanking your very good presentation, and is asking if is there any worry about the availability of irrigation? I think you already, in fact, answered that. And I will add to this question another point concerning the collective irrigation systems. What options do you consider adequate to incentivize the farmers to save water? Because this is a really important issue.
Well, I think in one of the slides I showed the Mediterranean region, and that actually the amount of water for irrigation will reduce in the near future. Of course, you could, and here and there they are insisting in building more dams and store water, but this has only limited options. I think we need to save water, and saving water means to well, incentivize at first, And then if this is not enough, you have to oblige farmers to save water. Well, here in the south of Portugal, we are already restricting to some extent the amount of water that farmers can use for irrigating specific crops. So, for example, for the maize crop, they are limiting now EDIA, distributing the water from the Alqueva Dam, is limiting the use of water for corn production to 6,000 cubic meters per hectare. So this is certainly a way forward. First of all, to incentivize, but then we need actually restrict the use of water. There's no doubt about that, this will be the situation in the future.
Yes. Thank you, Gottlieb, for your very interesting presentation. We move now for the second speaker. It's Michal Nekvasil. That just have you some. Thank you, first of all, for your availability for being with us. Just give some words about your biography. Michal contributes to designing the climate change adaptation policy at the Directorate General for Climate Action of the European Commission. During the Czech EU presidency in 2022, he directed the EU Common Position for COP27 and organized a major conference on climate resilient landscapes in Prague. Prior to that, he is designing and implementing climate-related projects in numerous countries, working for various organizations such as People in Need, UNDP, the World Bank, the Czech Development Agency, and others. Formerly, he worked at the Directorate General for the Environment as Deputy Head of Cooperation at the EU Delegation to Georgia and as Head of Cooperation of the EU Delegation to Nicaragua and Central America. He has a PhD in Environmental Studies from the Charles University in Czech. Thank you for being with us, and he will talk us about the EU policies fostering nature-based solutions for climate resilience. So please, Michal, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Boa tarde. Good afternoon, everybody. Could you kindly confirm that you can see me, hear me, and also see my slides? Yes, I see. Yes. I see nodding. So first, thanks a lot for having me, for this kind of invitation. Then congratulations to Professor Gottlieb Basch. I basically agree with nearly everything he has said up to the last detail. So I'll try not to repeat, but you'll see I'll be many times in my presentation confirming what he has said. What I'm going to offer you, as it was requested by organizers, a sort of menu of the EU policies fostering nature-based solutions and climate resilience. In the interest of time, I'll go quickly through my slides, but I've got a lot there that you can go read in detail after my presentation, or you can ask after the presentation itself. So let's go for it. Let's see if my slides are moving. Yes. I understand there are students in the room, and that is why I decided to start with this slide, which is done by IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, basically showing that the later you were born, the more you will suffer from the impacts of climate change, and the extent to which we will suffer would depend on our ability to mitigate climate change, that is to reduce the emissions of greenhouse gases. And that basically is exactly the same also for crop production that we are going to discuss. The impacts will be getting worse, and the more south in terms of Europe now I'm speaking, you are, of course, the more difficult it will be to adapt. Very quickly, the framework for all we do at the moment at the European Union is so-called European Green Deal. I'm sure you've heard about it. Basically, the idea is to become both climate neutral, but also climate resilient by mid-century. And for that, we've got several intermediate targets. And as a matter of fact, when you speak on the scale of the planet, we are the only region that not only has the targets, but has a very clear strategy how to reach it, including making it part of the legislation. As we are speaking about crop production, this is important because what you see on the graph are different sectors and how they contribute to climate change. If you look up the bottom line, the sort of pink color, that is called land use and forests. That basically stands for agriculture and forestry. And as you'll see, while all the other sectors are supposed, in all the sectors we are supposed to limit, reduce the emissions close to zero. In this sector, it is not likely to be possible. In other words, all those who will be able to contribute in their farming practices to greenhouse gas emissions reduction will be more appreciated and will be subject to, of course, support, etc. We've got lots of pieces of legislation, but there are two or maybe three most relevant. One is called land use change and forestry regulation, where it was agreed that we are supposed to, from this sector, to move ahead and with time reduce more and more millions of tons of CO2 equivalent. So this is yet another important context issue that we are working on. And again, all those who will be able in their farming practices to contribute to it will be better off. Then we've got nature restoration law that is very, very important. And that is among the only two in this perspective pieces of legislation that has not yet been approved. And the idea is that we would have in Europe, in each member state, at least 20% of land area we will restore by 2030, and by 2050 that we will restore all ecosystems that need this restoration. So this is very revolutionary piece of legislation, and we still hope it will be approved. And I thought while Gottlieb was speaking about one more that is not mentioned on my slides, and that is soil monitoring law. That has also been proposed by the Commission, but is still in the approval process, meaning with the European Parliament and the Council. So that was more the mitigation side. Now moving to the adaptation side that we are going to talk about. I am one of those who has contributed to drafting of what is called EU adaptation strategy, which is our main instrument to help us get to climate resilience by 2050 in various areas. And I will come to details of it if you're interested then in a discussion. Maybe to share with you a few lessons learned that are based mostly to nature, that focus on nature-based solutions. We found out that what is extremely important to be supported are natural landscape features. Some of those are mentioned on my slides, because those have an important impact also on our crop production. To give you an example, if there is a huge plot of field that is farmed in sort of industrial or conventional way, then very likely the soil is very poor on organic matter, is very poor on adaption, so the biodiversity in the soil is compacted by heavy machinery, is full of mineral fertilizers, full of pesticides, and besides others must be irrigated because there is no water or very limited water retention capacity, as Gottlieb explained before. So it requires lots of money to be invested in chemical fertilizers, in irrigation, etc., etc. And it is something that is not sustainable and will not be possible to use it in the future. What we found also as some of the important principle, that a monetary value is attached to these natural landscape features, and that whenever and whatever we do, we consider future climatic conditions. So in other words, when we are planting something, especially trees and whatever we have to think forward, we should not think about the climate now, but we should think about what the climate will be like in terms of trees in not only 1, 10, but maybe 80 years ahead. Of course, adaptation action must be place-based, so based on the local specific conditions that for sure are very different in Portugal as compared to northern Sweden, and that all relevant issues should be addressed at the same time, and that we should move, if we are honest and responsible about our adaptation efforts, we should be moving towards sustainable, organic, regenerative, climate smart conservation, or whatever you call the kind of farming that it's more resilient. Now, very briefly on another issue. This is our new kit on the block that was published only in March, so-called European Climate Risk Assessment, where we analyzed all the key risks in Europe, and in a report that was conducted by the European Environment Agency, 36 key risks were identified, and they were put in one of the 5 categories depending on urgency, and one of them is crop production, and crop production is at the very top of the list, where the most urgent action is needed to mitigate it. This was basically identification of a problem, what the problem is, what the risks are, and as a response to it, the European Commission published a communication on managing climate risks that is basically the solution. So the first one is defining the problem. The second one is a policy response, what we propose as a solution to this problem. I'll skip some of the slides just to give you a little bit of flavor. You may be interested to look into details, but on the left-hand side of this slide, if you can see it, you'll find Southern Europe in orange in the table upper left corner, and there you'll see that what is expected is that the temperature will keep rising, that the heat wave days will keep rising, that the total precipitation will keep declining, that we'll also have heavy precipitation, so very intensive rains, and that we will have more and more of a drought. Yeah? So that's the left-hand side, and the right-hand side is just to give you a little bit of complexity. You might not be able to read it, but again, you on the left-hand side, you've got the risks, and on the other side, you've got the policy areas, so showing that how the risks are interrelated among each other. I'll maybe skip this one and give you a little bit of a flavor of the actions that we are proposing, underlying only 3 of them, one related to climate resilient landscapes and the other 2 related to food. On climate resilient landscapes, I'm the one now responsible for drafting the guidance on the development of resilient landscapes. And what we mean by it is that if we want to be really efficient in our adaptation efforts, we should address at the same time measures that are related to at least 1, soil health, Professor Gottlieb was talking about it, water retention, and 3, forest resilience. And of course, also biodiversity and others, and all that in sort of management in landscape planning process. And it was started in 2022, when in Prague, in the Czech Republic, we organized a conference, and this approach was defined by the scientists and project implementers present, and it was also endorsed by environment ministers of all the countries, including, of course, Portugal. So again, in the presentation, you can look for details. I picked just one example from the EUCRA, sorry for the abbreviation, that's the EU Climate Risk Assessment. When it talks about food security, it talks, it highlights all through the text the issue of crop production and how it's failing during drought season. And in the reply, in the commission communication, we are proposing to make our food production future-proof, meaning we should be thinking about the impacts of climate change in the years to come and should adapt our production to the future situation, that we should adjust common agriculture policy, that the CAP, I'll come to it. Then we should be very rigid and very demanding when it comes to soil health monitoring, etc., etc. And I'll finish my presentation with what is called farm to fork strategy, that is sort of sets basis for what you would know and what is the most important instrument of the Europe or policy of the European Union when it comes to funding. You may or may not know that most of the farms in the European Union benefit from one way or the other from this EU Common Agriculture Policy. So not that much from national funding, but from funding that is governed on the EU level. And here on the right-hand side of the slide, you will see that 3 objectives of the new policy as of 2023 are devoted to climate, environment, and landscapes. Here are some details about the way how we do it. I'll a little bit elaborate on it. This is nothing else but what, again, Professor Gottlieb already mentioned, that these are GAICs, stand for Good Agriculture and Environmental Conditions. So these are conditions for the farmers, what they have to do in order to receive funding. So it talks about tillage management, for instance, and slope consideration. That's all about erosion. No bare soil. That was also mentioned, that always there should be a soil coverage, about crop rotation, about leaving a minimum share of arable land for non-productive purposes, etc., etc. So that's part of the policy. And for those farmers who want to go beyond it, there are so-called eco schemes. So if I'm a farmer and I want to do agroforestry, organic farming, any kind of carbon farming, precision farming, it was also mentioned, and it is provided for in your case in the Portuguese strategic plan, then I can benefit from some extra funding. To give you a perspective where we are, so this is what I was talking about, is the common agriculture policy till now, but the EU plans a lot ahead. So this is a little bit the idea where we are aiming, where we are moving to. And as you'll see already next year, we're supposed to come with the new proposals, how the common agriculture policy should look like after 2027. That's the end of the current financial period. There are lots of things to be considered in the planning. And as you have seen, and it has also been the case in Portugal, that farmers are not always happy if we are with the implementation of the common agriculture policy, and they tend to come to protest, but not necessarily against the environmental/climate principles, but more demanding funding and more funding and protesting against cheap imports. So the European Union had to react to it and said that what we are going to support in future is a competitive, resilient, and sustainable agriculture sector, and that we are going to provide a stable and predictable policy framework. Here are some of the publications that confirm what I just said, that resilience is a new compass for our European Union policy. So we are clearly aware and we are moving in this direction and try to integrate resilience in all policy areas. And here you can appreciate how difficult it is. It is still simplified chart of what needs to be considered, with always putting the citizens or consumers in the middle and trying to see about all that it needs to be taken into account, all the way to international trade, what kind of for instance crop production is coming from third countries. And we decided to launch what is called strategic dialogue with the key organizations that should provide an informed opinion how to reform the common agriculture policy. This is the last slide, that we are launching a discussion where we'll discuss the key issues related to the future policy, and resilience again comes as the first technical working group that should inform the future policy. I'll leave it here, not to be too long, and I'm happy to reply to any questions you may have. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for your very interesting presentation, Michel. Again, I remember that we have 5 minutes for questions. So if the participants want to have any question, please add it to the questions and answers. Meanwhile, Michel, I think it's I think you mentioned one of very actual issues. It's the farmers, because sometimes they are not very happy with some policies, and they show that in all Europe, just in recent time, as you show us and as you mentioned, and as we all know, now it's based in your experience, how do you think the EU intends to support farmers to their transition to a more sustainable production systems?
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for this question. I do consider it personally, but also the EU institution as such, as, if not the most important, then one of the most important issues. My take is that if we talk about binary world that is not real, yeah. So let's say the bad farmers, being the industrial ones I was talking about, and the good farmers, those trying to enhance the organic matter, retain water, take care of soil health, leave some land aside, and do all sorts of landscape measures, etc., etc. So in this binary world, there are always 20% that will stay in the industrial farming, 20% who moved already to, let's call it, sustainable farming, and we are fighting for the 60%. And these 60% of farmers that are key for our future resilience need a lot of support to move from the industrial agriculture to sustainable. That is difficult, that is risky, because also that takes time, for instance, for soil to recover, and we need to support them with appropriate funding, with knowledge, so all kinds of training, consultancy, etc., etc., with best practices, so the examples how it's being done in other countries, and in such a way it is very likely that they would transit to this more sustainable way of farming.
Thank you. Just to make a provocatory question, if I may. Do you think that, let's say, it's always depending on the definition of what is industrial farm? So, do you think that when we are talking in industrial farming, which is let's say, more intensive, more resources use, that is not compatible with sustainable production?
Well, yeah, that's a nice provocative question. My reply would be, look at Portuguese fields. Yeah, what we see coming, and both Professor Gottlieb talked about it. I showed you some graphs. It's very clear: temperature increasing, precipitation decreasing. So for me, there is not much future for the, let's say, industrial farming. One of the reasons is also that you need lots and lots of water for irrigation, because your soil is not able to retain enough water. And according to EU legislation, while using a water body, so a river, water stream, lake, whatever, you cannot use water from a body that is in so-called less than good status. And it's most of water bodies. And going further south in Europe, nearly all. Yeah, so basically we will not have, and our farmers will not be allowed even to use this kind of water, because they would create much worse problems elsewhere, which is why I think the only possibility is to progressively move to more sustainable farming that we need and we will support as the European Union.
Yes, thank you, Michel. We have a question from Owen Carton. Well, Owen says it's an excellent presentation. We all agree. And now the question: do you see any increase in farmer education to support the transition of the 60% of secure their ownership of the challenge and the required responses?
Sorry, I'm not sure. Can you repeat again?
Yes,
sorry.
Yes. I think you can also see it in the question.
No, I don't have it.
No. I'm going to read it again. Sorry. Do you see any increase in farmer education to support the transition of the 60% to secure their ownership of the challenge and the required responses?
Yes, I do. And I think it's in fact should not be that difficult because all the farmers do see the impacts of climate change. They do see how they struggle in their production. What I would add to what I've said already is that of course farmers are conservative, and at the same time they need to change a mind shift, and they need to do things in a very different way as compared to their ancestors. So Professor Gottlieb again showed in his presentation how the good period for farming has decreased. So if farmers do nowadays what their parents and grandparents used to do 20 and 40 years ago, they will fail. Not because they would not be good farmers, but because the circumstances have changed. So what for me is the most important, and this may be the most important message I would like the participants to retain, is that we need to work on this kind of mind shift and help those who see there is a problem in their transition to more climate resilient agriculture.
Yes, thank you, Mitchell. And also maybe it's, well, it's not maybe, it's for sure that the increased level of the education of the young farmers will also contribute for that change. And
Absolutely.
Most younger farmers are coming. So yes. So thank you very much for your presentation. I know that you will not be able to stay with us. So, but anyway, just thank you, and we hope to see you in other opportunities. Now,
thank you very much, and have a very nice rest of your workshop.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye. So we move for our last speaker, Matthew Marbury from the Harvard Institute du Végétal. Matthew is engineer in the French Technical Institute of Cereals, and he is in charge of an experimental station in the southeast of France, focused on climate change, evaluation of genotypes of durian wheat adapted to hydric stress, test of technical itineraries adapted to climate change and agroecological approach. That means conservation agriculture, organic farming, and agroforestry. He has been involved in the CAME project, focused on conservation agriculture in Mediterranean area. So, Matthew, the floor is yours. Thank you for your availability to be with us, and please.
Okay, thanks. Thanks. I think you can see my screen now. So I will give you a few words about soil conservation agriculture and feedback from participatory research in Mediterranean conditions. So we will speak about, we have a very quick, a very brief definition of conservation agriculture, and we will talk about the state of development of this agriculture and technical challenges for farmers. And I will give you some results, some field results from a participatory approach. And we will discuss about what we have discussed with two presentation before, that's to say about nitrogen and water efficiency, and some result about global effect of soil conservation agriculture on the soil fertility, biodiversity, production, etc., etc. So first, when we talk about conservation agriculture, we talk about an agriculture based on 3 pillars: minimum perturbation of soil, soil covered, and crop rotation diversification. The first pillar is minimum perturbation of soil, is the absence of reversal, is the elimination of tillage, or if it's in some of cases direct sowing. Then to maintain the maintenance of permanent soil covers is to have soil covered at the maximum with, of course, crops, with value crops, with cover plants during the intercropping, or with dead vegetables like mulch. And we will speak about this permanent soil cover in Mediterranean condition, because it's a very difficult point. And the third pillar is on crop rotation diversification, to have sufficiently varied rotation for sanitary reasons, including Fabaceous for fertility reason. The objectives of this agriculture, there are various, but we can quote the increase of soil fertility. It's a very important, a protection against erosion and water efficiency, carbon storage, and reduction of mechanical costs with less tillage and with no tillage. Here it's some data about the state of development of conservation agriculture in Mediterranean area. It's some data from a few years ago, and you can see that this kind of agriculture is not very developed, but in totality, here we are speaking about the conservation agriculture in its totality, that's to say with the three pillars. But of course, some of farmers are using some pillars from conservation agriculture, even if they are not totally in conservation agriculture. They could use plant cover during the intercropping. They could reduce tillage, etc., even if they are not in conservation agriculture. We have some important items on research thematic on conservation agriculture. First, for farmers, the most important is to secure the crop management in different pedoclimatic contexts. We have general principle on conservation agriculture, but we have to translate this principle in each pedoclimatic context. It's very important. We cannot use the same rules all around the Mediterranean area, because there is, of course, specific context. It's important also to understand conservation agriculture specifics. If there is on, for example, on soil properties, on nutrients dynamics, to identify research needs and the need to adapt the crop management to conservation agriculture. And finally, it's also important for policy, for European Commission, to have a good characterization of the multi-performance of conservation agriculture. What are the performances of this agriculture on production, on economic viability, which is of course very important for farmers, on soil properties, on climate mitigation, on biodiversity. So you can see that when we are studying conservation agriculture, we have to think on a medium term, because, for example, to characterize a multi-performance, we have to think about it in a medium term with a long period of transition to see the effect of this conservation agriculture. And we have also to work with farmers groups, which is very important to understand the diversity of ways to succeed conservation agriculture all around the Mediterranean area. So I was involved in a project which is just finished since a few days. It was a CAMA project for conservation agriculture in Mediterranean area. It was a PRIMA project with, you can see all this country involved in the project, and with different thematics of research. More research on to understand the socio-economic barriers to conservation agriculture adoption. The VP3 to define with farmers, directly with farmers, the research needs, and to create references, technical references with farmers directly in their field, so in a participatory approach. And after, other VP about genetic adapted to conservation agriculture, about water efficiency and nitrogen efficiency in conservation agriculture, and about environmental assessment of conservation agriculture, especially on carbon storage. So many thematics on this project, and it was led by CREA in Italy. And we have, you can see here, different partners of this project, some technical or research institute, and also farmers organization. You have a website of the project with all the result of the project if you are interested. So the first step on this project was to express farmers' needs and research. And when we talk about conservation agriculture, we talk also about some technical difficulties for farmers in the field, about weed control, because it's we don't have the possibility to manage weeds with ploughing. We are in direct sowing in most of the cases. About sowing, about crop fertilization, and about crop rotation. All these thematics was worked with farmers, and farmers' need was expressed in a focus group in each country involved in the project. So you can see, for example, I will not give all the detail, but you can see, for example, farmers' need. So there are some technical questions about weed control aiming at minimizing the use of herbicides, or to identify adequate crop rotation strategy to have a good weed control all along the years. On sowing, there is some question about crop residues management, because of course in that system of conservation agriculture, you have to sow directly in crop residues, and the level of crop residues could be important. So it could be it could have some consequences on technical itineraries. And about crop fertilization, also some question. And on crop rotation, one of the most important questions was to study climatic obstacles to summer crop diversification and to have soil covered during summer. I will give you a few words about some innovation tested in this project after. How to do with how to work with farmers. So we have organized different focus groups in different countries to identify the research need. And after that, so you can see that we have followed around 100 plots, farmer plots, farmer fields in all this country to identify all the limiting factors and to work on different innovation tested by farmers to have about weed control, about seeding, about crop fertilization, and about crop rotation. So we have many technical results in this project. And one of the result was of the innovation tested was to see to understand how to increase soil cover in summer. Of course, we are in Mediterranean area, so we have a permanently negative water balance during summer. You can see there is, of course, some difference between country. Here is a effective rainfall, but we have a permanently negative water balance from middle of April to middle of September. So we are not in North Europe or in center of Europe, So it's difficult to have soil cover during summer in rain-fed system, in system without irrigation. So we have in southeast of France a trial dedicated to identify innovation to increase soil cover in summers with the use of semi-permanent cover like alfalfa or onobrychis, semi-permanent cover which are sowed with crops or under crops. And plant covers continue to cover the soil after the harvest in July or in June of the crop. And so with that we have soil cover during summer and restart in autumn. This is some innovation we have tested in different crop rotation and different combination between semi-permanent covers and value crops harvested by the farmer. So we have studied many combinations during the project and also before the project. It is in southeast of France, in a Mediterranean context in southeast of France. Of course, it has to be adapted and thought in other countries. We have in this project also characterized some conservation agriculture effects on yields. We don't have significant difference yields on cereals between conventional tillage and conservation agriculture. We have also on soil water content capacity. We have made some diagnosis on soil water content capacity. It's a little upper under conservation agriculture. The main fact in conservation agriculture we have measured is a better infiltration, a better water infiltration, which could be very interesting in some very strong rain we could have in the Mediterranean area. We have also diagnosis a little better nitrogen and water productivity under conservation agriculture, but we have to say that we have various responses, probably in relation of the age of transition in conservation agriculture. And a very interesting trial was made in Tunisia, so in very dry condition, with a comparison from 12 years between different kind of tillage, no tillage, moderate tillage, and conventional tillage. You can see that at the beginning of the trial, the level of yield was the same, and the yield was upper in conventional tillage. And after the years, we have an inversion, and we have better yield. It seems we have better yield in conservation agriculture system. So interesting result in very dry condition about, in this case, water efficiency, because it was in semi-arid condition with no irrigation. And to finish, we have also, so this is a result from French plots, French fields, with many comparison in different location with side by side different systems of production, conventional systems, organic system, and conservation agriculture system. And we have made some measurement on soil biodiversity, soil fertility, and production and our economic indicators. So you can see that so on soil biodiversity, we have measured on carabids, spiders, earthworm, or microbial biomass. Conservation agriculture have a positive effect on earthworm and microbial biomass, and not on spider, and we have less carabids in conservation agriculture. On flying insects, which is also a component of biodiversity, of course, it's the same between the different systems. And we have also interesting result on soil fertility. We have the percentage of organic matter, that's to say carbon storage, an approximation of carbon storage. We have good result on conservation agriculture, and the most important is on conservation agriculture, we have very good result on structural stability measured by a test named the Slake test. So structural stability is very upper in conservation agriculture. It's a good point for erosion. And after, we are same level of durum wheat production on conventional and conservation agriculture system. Direct economic value for producer is also the same. And in greenhouse gases, in that case, we have a very strong positive effect of organic agriculture because we don't use mineral fertilization in organic agriculture. So this is the same result, but in another way to have a global view of this result and what are the advantages of the different systems and how the different systems could contribute to sustainability of agriculture. So in conclusion, about conservation agriculture, we can see that there are still technical and socio-economic barriers to the adoption of conservation agriculture. In fact, I talk about diversification, which is very important to manage weeds in conservation agriculture, for example, or to manage fertilization. But for that, economic market should be more developed for crop diversification. It could be a problem in some of states around the Mediterranean area because in some of the situation, markets are very developed by state and farmers are not free of what they could sow in their soil. There is also an important point, it's accessibility to machines and specific machine we need in conservation agriculture, especially machine of direct sowing. Genetic selection, we have there is also many things to do on genetic selection, especially on plant covers and to work on plant covers adapted to very dry and very hot conditions. And conservation agriculture has many advantages, environmental and climate advantages, but it still depends on herbicides, of course, and glyphosate in particular. We have identified many innovations to succeed conservation agriculture about weeds management and soil cover during summer. No significant difference yields on wheat with conventional agriculture, and some interesting results on water efficiency, nitrogen efficiency, and soil properties. It's a good points we have to continue to characterize and work with farmers to help them to succeed conservation agriculture. Thanks.
Thank you, Matthew, for your very nice presentation. Again, I remember the participants that you can participate with the questions using the questions and answers. And meanwhile, I have some points that I would like to mention. Based in your experience in the KAMA project, do you think that in the different Mediterranean countries, in general, are they aware of the climate change impacts and, of course, the need for adaptation? Or did you find a big difference in the different countries of the awareness of this important issue?
Yeah. I think I have with the KAMA project, we have so many collaboration all around the Mediterranean area. And I think that farmers are very conscious of climate change because when I discuss with Tunisian, Morocco, Algerian farmers, they are very scared with climate change because without irrigation, we have to know that for cereal production in many situations there is no harvest now. So it's very very difficult for farmers. So yes, they are very conscious about this problem, and they are thinking and they are working with farmer organization or with technical institute or research institute. They are working on adaptation to climate change, which is very violent in these regions.
Yeah, thank you. And do you have any reference on the effect of conservation agriculture on water dynamics in dry conditions?
Yes, we have some references on that. I can share my screen to show you that. So yes, you can see here. This is a study from in south of France to have comparison with comparison.
Sorry, Matthew. We are not seeing you are not sharing the screen.
Ah, sorry.
Thank you.
So I think now you can see, so it's not that. Tac. So in south of France, we had a project. It's not the CAMA project, it's another project, but no matters. With comparison between conventional and conservation agriculture on fields side by side. And we have made many measurements on soil properties of these systems. We observe a few differences on soil water content capacity from 0 to 10%. So there is a little effect in favor of conservation agriculture, but it's not a very big effect. The most important effect we have measured on conservation agriculture is a better saturation conductivity. That's to say, a better water infiltration in conservation agriculture. You can see here the differences, which is very important between fields with tillage and the neighbor fields in conservation agriculture. So in conservation agriculture, we have a better water infiltration. It's the most important effect. So it's very important for the climate in Mediterranean area. And we have also a better soil temporal stability because no mechanical soil perturbations. So in many cases, we observe in conservation agriculture better roots development than in conventional systems.
Thank you, Matthew, for your again for your very nice presentation. We are going now for the end of this webinar. I want to thank to all the speakers for the excellent presentations, and also to the participants that have been here. Let me just make a small resume of this webinar. We know that this webinar aimed to provide an update on research and innovation into climate change adaptations, responses to sustainable farming and food systems. It is clear that a lot has been done, but many challenges still remain. In this first webinar, it has been shown that emerging adaptation strategies and knowledge of available actions can be applied at farm level. And most of all, we can see that there isn't only a solution. It's a combination of several technologies and practices that can be applied and have potential to increase the efficiency, the resilience, and to contribute to the adaptation. It's also clear that the Mediterranean has unique characteristics, as have been mentioned by all our speakers, and also some specific vulnerabilities requiring conditioned efforts at local, regional, and also, of course, in international level. Also, increasing the resilience and adaptation to climate changes require a multidimensional approach that integrates the crop, climate smart practices, the sustainable soil management, the water efficient technologies, new or adapted crop or varieties, pest and disease surveillance, biodiversity conservation, landscape planning, behind others. It's a inter and transdisciplinary task requiring strong collaboration between the academy, the research, the farmers, the policymakers, and all the stakeholders involved in the food and food production sector. I believe that we are working on the right direction, but sure, we need to work all together. Now, let me just remember that this webinar is the first webinar of a series of 3 webinars. The first one hosted by us, by MED, and then the other 2 hosted by ACTA and INEA in Spain. So in the series of a climate change adaptation for agriculture and food systems in the Mediterranean region. This means that you are invited for the second and 3 webinar, that the second webinar will be dedicated to the adaptation responses for horticulture, viticulture, and olive production in the Mediterranean region, and it is scheduled for June 6th. And the third one will be dedicated to the climate change adaptation in the Mediterranean livestock systems, scheduled for June 26th. So please remember to register for these for the next webinars, and also I think it's time to close. We are now 1 hour and a half since we started. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for your participation, and thank you, of course, once again for our excellent speakers. Thank you. Bye. Have a nice day.
Thank you all, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.